Okay, welcome everybody to Startup Grind. Thank you all so much for coming. We gathered here tonight to celebrate women entrepreneurs and these amazing founders we have with us tonight. Just out of curiosity, how many people came to previous Startup Grind events? Okay, few. And then how many of you, is this the first time? Okay, we have some newbies, that's good. For those of you who don't know, Startup Grind is the world's largest community of entrepreneurs. We're in about 700 cities, across 200 countries, and we host monthly events. We have so far almost 4 million registered entrepreneurs, and our mission is to educate every single entrepreneur on this planet. So tonight, in particular, we have a pleasure of hosting female entrepreneurs. Let me just change the slides. So yeah, as you know, my name is Peter. I'm a director of Startup Grind London. I also run my own micro VC fund and accelerator called Supreme Factory. And as I mentioned, this is Women's Month. So around the world, we're celebrating great female entrepreneurs and investors. And thank you so much for joining us in that. So you have a treat, we have a panel and Q&A. You could use slido.com/SGWomen to ask questions, or we could, you can stand up and ask questions later as well. And then we're going to break up to networking session, but we'll also have a legal clinic here hosted by our partner, Louis Silking. So I would like to invite dear partners to say a few words about that.
Thank you very much. Hello, can everyone hear me okay? So I'm Francesca from Louis Silkin. Oh gosh, no one warned me that my face would be on the screen, but there you go. As Peter said, we work with Startup Grind and have been for a while, and we host legal clinics at the events. So you can see our sign just outside the door. Please do come and say hello at the end. If you've got any questions, we're here to have a quick chat with anyone in the room. We have the sort of formal clinic just here, and then there'll be a few of us upstairs at the drinks as well. And some of my colleagues are on the back row there. So if they have a quick wave, they're the people to go to. So we work with startups and scale-ups at all levels, and we have an initiative called Cube as well. So if you don't, also on the screen, if you don't manage to come and say hi to one of us or ask us any questions this evening, then please do Google Cube by Louis Silkin. Have a look at the site. There's lots of helpful tips and advice on there for startups and scale-ups, and all of our contact details. So if you do want to get in touch afterwards, please do reach out. I myself am actually a corporate lawyer. So if you have any questions about starting your business, incorporating a company, fundraising, M&A, I think one of the things that a lot of founders maybe don't think about in the early stages of a business is your founding documents, rights and restrictions between shareholders. And so that's one of the key areas I'd really encourage you to come and have a chat with us about if you haven't thought about shareholders agreements, articles, things like that to date. And it's an area that I talk to clients and contacts about all the time. So please do come and give me a shout. In the current climate, we completely appreciate that costs might be an issue, particularly for startups. We're not charging anyone this evening, so we really are here to just give you a helping hand, give you some tips. But even in the future, please do reach out to us. We're happy to talk about budgets. Lawyers can add value and can really help you to save costs in the future. So I really do encourage you to reach out and talk to a friendly lawyer. We're not as terrifying as people like to make you think. And then for me personally, one of the reasons that I wanted to come and say hello today is I'm actually a member of the gender strand of our D&I board. So I'm also a member of Bloom, which is a women's network for the communications industry, if any of you've heard of it. So having events like this, which are focused on female founders, hearing about so many VCs and banks who are really focused on female representation at board level, it's just a huge passion of mine. It's really important. Getting a bit of feedback, and so it's just fantastic to be here, and we're really delighted to be in the room. So please do come and say hello at the end, or reach out afterwards. Feel free to add me on LinkedIn, and looking forward to the discussion. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So Lewis Saving has a legal clinic in one of these beautiful glass pods. So feel free to get a drink later and then talk to them. Do we have anybody from IDEALondon here maybe to say a few words? I hope so. IDEALondon is a wonderful innovation space. I actually had the pleasure of working here in 2015. It's a part of UCL's innovation program. And they host wonderful programs and events here. So make sure to check that out. I hope that Marta or someone from IDEALondon can tell you more about this. But without any further ado, tonight we have a fantastic panel of wonderful ladies. I just can't wait to hear more about it. So would like to ask Catherine McQueen to introduce everybody. So.
I think I'm not, is my mic working?
I think it is.
It is. Okay, good. Yeah, so today we are joined by Anna Buldakova, who's sat next to me, and she is the CEO of Vector AI. Next to Anna, we have Joe Parker Swift, who is the CEO of Solivus. Thank you for joining us. And we have also Victoria Armstrong, who is the strategic advisor of Kogo, as well as being a serial entrepreneur. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us today. Can we start by I don't know if it's the question that I suppose everybody wants to know is, how did you get involved with working in technology? Anna, do you want to start us off on that?
Sure. Should I use a mic as well? Yes, please. Yeah, sure. So by background, I'm actually a journalist. So I had an 8-year-long career in journalism, and then I decided to become a product manager. So I transitioned into product management, worked in machine learning for quite a while. My last gig was at Facebook, where I was a product lead for artificial intelligence products. And then I just realized that I want to become an entrepreneur. So that was kind of the next part of my career. And to me, entrepreneurship is just a continuation of kind of different interests and passions that I explored in life. So essentially, I wasn't looking at my career as just like one linear thing. I was trying to explore what actually makes sense for me. And in product management, we actually talk a lot about focusing on the problem rather than on solution. So essentially trying to understand why you are doing something rather than trying to focus on specific aspects of what you would like to do. So the same approach I'm applying to my career as well. So essentially trying to understand what I would like to change in the world, and then trying to understand how I could achieve that in the most efficient way. So that's how I ended up in entrepreneurship, because essentially to me right now, it feels like the best way, to be honest, to achieve my goals and also to make impact in the world. But who knows what will be next.
Hi, thanks. So the reason I got into tech, so this is the third company that I've founded, and each company's always been about creating something. Yeah, a new market and going into new fields. I've got an environmental science degree. My second company was a software company, but I wanted for the third one to go back to my roots of the environmental science side, and we're not going to solve the climate crisis with software. So that's why I started going into this business, which is a solar energy business. So although it's hardware, it's also linked in with obviously energy in terms of the software and the finance side. So it's hardware, software, and finance, but it's about creating something and hopefully contributing to sorting out the climate crisis.
I've got my baton here. Why did I get into entrepreneurship, startup stuff? It's been 18 years now, but I was a late starter. So I was 31 when I decided to brave it. And it was actually from, I think, quite selfish reasons. I've always had a vision of where I wanted to go and what the end of success looked like for me and for my family. And I realized that these pieces weren't coming together in the way I wanted them to. So having gone through a bit of burnout and just thinking, you know, there's a better way. So my partner nudged me and said, when are you going to believe in yourself? And she was right. And so I did it 18 years ago. And I have never looked back. We'll learn a lot about this, but, you know, 7 startups and 4 that I've founded or co-founded now, and a couple have been acquired. And I think that's just a lot of luck, quite frankly, everyone. But hey, and okay, a bit of tenacity and dedication, but I wouldn't change anything now. And I feel it's still a privilege to be running and starting businesses, and now more maturely having the impact that I really want to in an unselfish way outside of my own dreams.
Sorry. Thank you. Great answers. Thank you so much. So looking at role models, who would you say is your role model, and how can you also be a good role model in tech?
Oh, I'm always the first one. I actually have a couple for different reasons. So the first one I would definitely say is Richard Feynman, for his constant strive for curiosity and just exploring the world. Because essentially in everything that he was doing, he was a physicist, and he did a lot of fantastic innovations. And he just, he was just very curious about what could change the world, how the world works. And I think that's a mindset that we all should apply, because essentially when you're curious, you're not afraid to fail. And I think it's super important. The second person I definitely would mention is Marie Curie, for her persistence and resilience, because she was one of the first female scientists of the time. And just to think what courage it took at her time to pursue this kind of career, and to focus on the life of science rather than on a traditional path. That was definitely outstanding. And what she demonstrated over her life is just making sure that she could achieve what she wanted to achieve. And this kind of persistence also shows that whatever you want to do, if you actually put your mind to it and you focus on it, and you just put a lot of effort into it, that would lead you somewhere. And I think, like, right now, there are many fantastic women who are super inspiring. And I'm just admiring their careers, like Michelle Obama, for example, or like a lot of other women in tech. And I think, like, everyone could teach us something. But I think the most important part, kind of going back to the question of how you can be a role model, is trying to understand what kind of values you are trying to translate and to share with the world. If you think especially about Gen Z and younger generations, for them, it's more and more important to follow not just the monetary remuneration and not just the money, but essentially something that could change in the world. And it's already quite prominent. Like, even if you think about their investment decisions, they only invest in companies which they believe in. And the same goes about leaders. So they only follow people that they think represent their values. So I think that's the most important part about being a good role model, is actually being true to yourself and being transparent and open about the values that you represent, so that a community of like-minded people could form around you.
Yeah, thanks. Well, in terms of my role models, I'm quite lucky to be working with one of them, Juliet Davenport, who founded Good Energy. She founded Good Energy, I think it's about 20 years ago now. But when I came up with my idea for Solivus, I thought, crikey, I don't know anything about the energy sector. You know, how is this possibly going to work? And I saw her on BBC Breakfast TV, and she was talking about the fact that she hadn't been from the energy sector, and because she wasn't from that background, when she started Good, she was looking at things from a different perspective, and she was coming in with a fresh perspective. And I think that's the thing. Don't be afraid to sort of break into new ground and do something new just because you don't necessarily have experience in that sector. It might be an advantage because you're not coming into it with any preconceptions. Some of the tech that I looked into, people had been researching it years ago, and they had all of these historical things about it that were 15 years old and completely out of date. And because I'd started afresh and coming in, I'd learned that everything had been updated and everything had changed. And so, yeah, then I reached out to her on LinkedIn, which has been a brilliant help to me. And through various conversations over some time, she's now supporting me as a board advisor. So when I met her and to come in and help, I was just sort of a bit in awe of her, and I couldn't really talk to her to begin with. But she's completely fantastic. But I also do have amazing admiration for Elon Musk as well, because to have that sort of vision and be able to drive those massive companies again in different things he's never done before, and to include PayPal, Tesla, the Boring Company, and now, you know, rockets to Mars. I mean, it's just bonkers, isn't it, what you can do with your imagination? And you know, Einstein said imagination is more powerful than knowledge. Imagination, and to actually be able to see something, visualize it, and just drive it to happen. Those people are truly inspiring.
Wow. My role models varied, and I've had so many along the way. I wouldn't even call them necessarily role models, because I learn gems of from so many people, right? But I could take a group of people, and I'm not sure if people know, but the Suffragettes and the women's vote was first initiated in New Zealand, which is my home. And so I think about the types of things that have evolved from, you know, 120, 30, 40 years ago, from a small group of women and how brave they were. And there's a lot of bravery around what they did, to also thinking about today and someone in Jacinda Ardern, who is the Prime Minister of New Zealand. And her leadership is fantastic. She's made some big decisions that will have saved lives, but have also will impact on our economy, which I was sharing with my colleagues here, for another generation, in terms of how our GDP and our economy is going to come out of that. So the narrative at the top level is all very lovely, and I rate her as a woman. People like Helen Clark too. So great mentors, great role models for me growing up. And sprinklings of amazing, not just women, but men in between. And as I say, I think taking the nuances of and the gems of each of these people and how that relates to my values and how I want to use that every day, or those pieces every day, to help refine me and what I do, and to be true to me and what I do. That's the essence of it and what I've got out of it.
Thank you. Great answers there. Looking at someone who wants to start out in this industry, in tech, whether it's starting their own business or working for a big company, what's the best bit of practical advice you could give someone?
Maybe we could start with Victoria.
I'll jump in. Practical advice. I was thinking about this a little bit, because some of these questions, we've had 30 questions thrown at us, and we don't know which ones are going to come, by the way. But thinking about that and practical advice and starting up was, for me, is when making decisions, and many of them will be no's and should be no's, the decisions for me that will always have the best outcome are the ones that are made aligning to my values. That's an easy thing to say, but what does it mean in the moment? For me, it's around those aha moments. If you're true and understand your values and you are fully in your skin, as in you're not being drawn outside of your skin because of your values and things like that. If you're fully in your skin and you feel that aha moment and a decision, go with that because your values are aligned and you will not look back. When there's so much pressure in your life and there's so many decisions, and it is, and you're either open to the change and to those pressures or you're not, it is what it is. My advice is fall on those moments of, am I in my skin? Is this an aha, true to my values? Go with it and make a decision and just back yourself.
Sorry, remind me of the initial question again.
What's the best practical bit of advice?
That's right. Yeah, sorry, I was listening to you. For each business I've started, I'm always aware that there's a stage at the beginning before you start getting any money in, whether it's raising investment or selling anything to get revenue. There's a gap from starting the company to money starting to come into the bank. So always make sure you've got enough money in the bank, I would say, for at least a year to 18 months. Just imagine you're not going to earn anything for a year to 18 months. And when things, do start moving, just cash flow, cash flow, cash flow. Just watch the cash flow, because that is why most businesses fail, because people are not watching the cash flow. So that would be maybe a bit too obvious, but.
Yeah, I have three areas, three things that I would like to highlight as a person who made this transition first from a journalist to a product manager in machine learning, and then from a product manager to an entrepreneur. So those three things helped me. So the first one is actually making sure that your other areas of life are in a stable place, because essentially change is always hard and it's always emotional, it's always stressful, and it's likely that it will take a lot of your time and a lot of your emotional capacity as well. So if you have any changes happening in other areas of your life, it's better to make sure that it settles down at least a little bit before you make any other change, because otherwise it would be just a disaster to take care of all the stuff altogether. The second thing is kind of connected to the first one, is find a supporter or mentor or a friend who will be there for you. Ideally, it would be a mentor who already went through this stuff and they know what kind of mistakes and things to avoid and not to focus on, or actually to do in your first couple of months, because there are so many things that you don't know, and it's always better when you have someone on your side, even if for confidence or for emotional support. It's always very helpful, and for me it accelerated all my transitions. Even when I was moving between companies, it always was so helpful to be able to talk to someone and to get some support on that, and some practical advice. As all stories are very different and all the backgrounds are very different, so the more personalized advice you can get, the better. And the third one is just having some kind of fundamentals of the transition. So for example, when I was transitioning to entrepreneurship, I was recommended this book called The CEO Within, which was super helpful, which just kind of basic, but it gives you the kind of the lay of the land. So understanding of what kind of structure there is in terms of entrepreneurship. And similar with product management, there is a book called Inspired, which also gives you an overview of what kind of journey you should expect. And it's always helpful because the uncertainty is always scary. When you don't know how much is kind of you need to go through, then it's always it always feels like it's a lot. But when you can put an end to it and you can put it into milestones, then it's always helpful. And this kind of books, they help you understand what's behind you. And just another book that I would recommend, it's called Emotions at Work. It's also very useful to understand how emotions intertwine with our decision making, with our perception of what's happening. And it's super helpful because, again, like if you're talking about a transition, starting something new, dealing with emotions would be one of the biggest things. So this book is very helpful with practical advice as well.
Thank you.
CEO Bizin.
Starting your own business is very rewarding, particularly if it's successful, but we all know there are lots of pitfalls to avoid. Joe, I think you touched on it earlier with cash flow. Victoria, have you got any other pitfalls to avoid that you could tell us a bit more about?
Pitfalls to avoid. What's her name? That was from the legal business at the front here. Well done. Francesca, forgive me. Pitfalls to avoid around that legal. I don't think you can get enough. That's my glass. You cannot, I don't say spend enough, but you cannot put enough, you need to put the attention on the legal and the financial pieces at the front end of your business. It will come back in spades. I agree with you. So pitfalls, get those basics in place, get good advice. I don't mind paying more for the accounting and for the legal than any other part of the business. And you can't do that too early either, right? But in saying that, I've learned the hard way. I've failed in business. I've made mistakes, and I still had those things in place too, Francesca. Some of those things you cannot control. There's plenty of pitfalls, plenty of pitfalls, but that's one.
Anna, have you got any that you can think of?
I mean, I'm quite an early stage entrepreneur, so I'm just like 5 months in. So take my advice with a pinch of salt. But I think like first, one of the biggest things I think is making sure that you got the people part right. Because if you got the idea right, or if you got like some other parts, if you got the idea wrong, and if you got some other parts wrong, if you got the right people around you, then you can turn it around and you can find your way through that. You can find your ways through different failures or mistakes. And essentially with the right team, you'll be able to do anything. And essentially your team is a representation of the values and the product and the kind of the end values that the customer would get. So making sure that you hire the right people is probably one of the most important things. And the second thing is just making sure that you're building systems, not doing some ad hoc decisions as they come in, but you're thinking about what kind of systems I should put in place, what kind of frameworks or kind of thresholds I could introduce to make sure that my people are aligned on the vision, are aligned on the big picture and on the most important pieces, but they still have this autonomy to operate within. So essentially making sure that you are approaching it as a design system rather than just a series of unconnected decisions. So for me, in the last 5 months, it's been kind of the two most important ones.
Mine would be obviously the cash flow thing first, and then, sorry to swear, but bullshitters. Have your radar up with those, because people will be telling you things to get promoted and better their career, and they might be slagging other people off in the company because they want their job or whatever it is. And those types of characters can be really damaging, and they can be really believable. And you don't realize what's happening until some disaster's happened. So yeah, just be really, really wary of those folk. If everyone else is sort of saying, oh, they've done this and done that, but anyway, just get your facts right and make sure that somebody that you might be really trusting to give you feedback on the team, make sure it's actually correct. Have you ever had anyone like that?
Oh, 100%. I'm a saleswoman, but I easily get sold to. We're the easiest people to sell to, right? And yeah, get drawn in too easily. Just one more, if I may. Anna, it prompted me with startup, and especially in tech, which I've been in. I think we get in a pitfall of trying to solve the problem on a too wide a basis and a too longer milestone. And so the pitfall is trying to solve for the big. In startup, you need to, in my opinion, solve for the 6 months and the number one pain that is in your face right now. So look 6 months out. What does success look like there? What's the biggest problem and pain that you're trying to solve? Address that, move on, be agile and adapt.
That's really good to hear you say that. Yeah, thank you.
Looking at sacrifices, have any of you had to make any sacrifices, either professionally or personally, for the sake of your career? Anna, can I start with you as you're right next to me?
Sure. I mean, I think I don't particularly like the word sacrifice because I feel like if you feel like you're making a sacrifice, then at some point you will expect some sort of like a fantastic reward for what you've done. And yeah, no, I think like definitely there are trade-offs in any career. And when we are not making any decisions, there is still this trade-off because you're not pursuing any new opportunity. So essentially at any point in time, you should be asking yourself if I'm in the right position, if I'm doing the most important thing I can be doing. Am I actually following my passions and doing the best I can for the world? And I think like for me, definitely there was this very pivotal moments, like when I was, for example, leaving my journalistic career because I was like an editor-in-chief. And when I was transitioning into product management, it was an intern position. So definitely a huge jump in terms of responsibilities and what I could do. Like in journalism, I already had a reputation. It was quite easy to apply for new jobs. And obviously it was a challenge to transition into a new one. But to me, having a bigger goal, like understanding why I'm doing something was definitely a motivation. And even though it was very hard, in the first couple of months, I cried and it was so difficult to just understand how to live in this new skin. It was definitely worthwhile. I think like when you're doing this kind of transition and you are considering and weighing all those trade-offs, it never should be for some short-term reasons. It never should be about running away from something. It should be about pursuing something that you're really passionate about.
Yeah, so I agree. I don't like the word sacrifice. I prefer the word choice. It's choices, isn't it? So yeah, loads of sacrifice. I've been pretty broke quite a few times, and you're paying everyone else's salary and not your own. Been in that situation a couple of times, which is a bit grim. Sacrificing, yeah, really good job with loads of money. That was a steady income. Suppose that I suppose the ultimate one was when I had my children and I wasn't able to take any maternity leave. But again, that was a choice because now they're older and, you know, I've managed to organize things so that I can spend time with them now in the summer holidays. I can work remotely and do things that if I was in a job employed with somebody else, perhaps I wouldn't be able to easily do. So again, it's just different choices have led to different opportunities. But yeah, sleep, sacrifice a lot of sleep.
I empathize. Choices, yeah. And it's easy to look with a lens in hindsight versus at the front end of, will it be a sacrifice? What will I be sacrificing? You know, I started a family late, 38, and I was trying to make a decision to get into my third business at that stage, third founding business, and to invest in it. And I thought, can I bring up two both at the same time? And I wasn't going to sacrifice both. So the decision was, am I going to compromise? No, I'm going to go for it. And I'm going to give 50% to both babies, the business and the baby. And I didn't think I was sacrificing anything. But in hindsight, I was. Don't get me wrong, the outcome's fantastic, i.e. 2 healthy boys, right? But what I didn't realize is because there's no maternity pay back in New Zealand for entrepreneurs, unless you're employed, right? Which I wasn't employed, I was an entrepreneur. Then how soon was I going to come back into the business? Well, 5 days. So that's what you do. And so you're bouncing on a Swiss ball, doing the accounts with the baby on your breast, sort of stuff. That was my reality. the cost and the consequence and the sacrifice is that I got postnatal depression. And you cannot expect these things, and nor do you. But the sacrifice is that I've struggled to bond with my son ever since. Now, 11 and a half years on, I'm trying to wean off pills for postnatal depression, SSRIs. There's been a sacrifice there because I have, for whatever reason, chosen to pursue this consistent entrepreneurial bent, right? Is it ego? Who cares? Put it how you want. But that has a cost, an opportunity cost. Can I change that? God knows I can try to, but that is a big opportunity cost. End of the day, 2 healthy boys, done it all, great. Would I do it again? Yes, 100%.
Thank you. Thank you for your honesty. Do you notice a lack of women in startups? And if so, why do you think that is?
Yeah. Look, I can only take it from a technology hat because that's where I've been in biotech, tech, health tech, blah, blah, 18 years. But so going back to New Zealand and that ecosystem 18 years ago, absolutely. Startup world now, 18 years on, has it changed? From a tech perspective, nowhere near enough, still not. I find it incredulous, it hasn't changed enough. From a startup world, well, actually, I'm in mentoring and advising into outside of just tech, and I'm doing it with women. So I go from that lens, yeah, it's changing. Is it changing enough? I don't know, but I have some views on why, of course, but I'll share that later.
Yeah, I think there are not enough female entrepreneurs, obviously. I don't know why there aren't. I can't accurately answer that question because the opportunity is there. We have a system in the UK called EIS or SEIS, which is a massive help to more risky startups. And that is very attractive for investors, no matter how sort of biased they are to whether it's females or whatever, that de-risks it. So investors tend to invest in profiles of things that they are used to, that they've had success with before. And by the sheer nature of it, there aren't that many females. So they, often the formula doesn't tick a box, but the SEIS and EIS de-risks that for them, and that makes it a lot easier. So I think the more successful female entrepreneurs there are, the more investors will feel happy with the formula and realize that it's actually a massive opportunity and less for risk. So I think just gradually over time, there will be increasing numbers of them. Yeah.
Yeah, I actually see an increasing number of female entrepreneurs in like slightly older category, like over 30, like for example, I mean, like not in their 20s. I'm 31, so I'm also in this older category. I mean, I have a lot of friends who are like who left Revolut or Facebook, and they are starting their own businesses. And I think that's fantastic. Like in the last couple of years, definitely an increase in number of such women, but probably not so much in like a younger category in 20 years. And I think like a lot of this is coming from the fact that those large tech companies, they are definitely helping with this mindset shift. So essentially all those women joining this company as like junior engineers or junior product managers, they see those examples of female leaders and they can get inspired, they can get advice, and they can build their network quite easily. While women in their 20s, they probably are not as exposed to great examples of female leadership. So hopefully this will be changing, like with more and more females starting their own companies and inspiring women. Another thing that I think is quite important is like what we discussed with regards to maternity leave, because obviously if you work at Facebook, then you get like 4 months of maternity leave. and you can just stop what you're doing and you can just focus on your kid and like no questions asked. At the same time, I cannot imagine like stopping being a founder of the company for 4 months and just like not getting back to work for this time. And it's definitely making it hard for women entrepreneurs, because essentially it's quite a big question to ask yourself if you want to do that. And obviously this is less stability than with any big company. So I think like those two things, like the first one is mindset, and the second one is just taking care of all this kind of big questions that at some point arise in any life. I think it's quite important before we can see more female entrepreneurs.
Thank you so much for those wonderful answers. I think we're going to take questions from the floor now, but I would like to start with the first question, if that's all right. Joe, I think you touched on it earlier, and we talked about investors. Investors are always looking for an exit. So do you have that in mind when you're starting up your company? And also in terms of an exit, what's preferable, IPO or takeover?
Yeah, I think right now there are many choices. Like when I started my company, everyone was asking me like if I want to do a lifestyle business or I actually want to do like a $1 million company. And that's a totally fine question to consider, because like sometimes you want to start a business just because you want to start a business. You don't want to massively change the world. You don't want to build a 10,000 people company. And that's an option. Initially, that was quite an interesting surprise, because I only thought about like a 10,000 people company. But yeah, I think essentially that's the first question to ask yourself. And then the second one is also, I think, depends on your own goals, because sometimes you might be building a company just to sell to somebody. And there are many successful examples like Masquerade acquired by Facebook, or many others. And there might be some ambitious companies which would be aiming for an IPO or for like a longer history and kind of leaving a bigger mark in the history. So all those options are totally fine. I think it just depends on your own kind of goals as an entrepreneur. For us, we are looking for an IPO, but future will tell. And I think this will be quite an interesting journey, because essentially for everybody it's quite different. Like when you're joining a company which is aiming for an exit versus an IPO, it's a different path and a different kind of development for everyone. So I think it's really a personal choice.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, some people start businesses and they run those businesses for years and they don't exit. I think if you're getting investors in, I mean, I've always had I like creating. So I always like to create something, get something up and running, enjoy doing that, get to a certain stage and then exit. So I've always done that. And that will be the same with Solivus. I'll enjoy really scaling it and scaling it as much as possible. But then at some point the time will be right to exit, and obviously have had those conversations with investors regarding sale or IPO. I'm still mulling that over.
Completely concur with both of you on what drives you as a founder, and I think your decisions will change as you go along as to IPO or exit. It's not a given. But of course, the narrative around that, if you're going for money, has to be very clear. And it's okay to, to feel differently on the inside, but your narrative needs to be clear externally to it. So what drives you as a founder? Creating, growing, building, leading, pulling people with you, get those foundational pieces in place first, enjoy that stuff. And the rest, I think, can fall in place. Not always to focus so hard on the money, because you can bootstrap it, let's not forget. And you can build a successful company and bootstrap it and still get acquired and get the right numbers that you need to.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for our panelists?
Sure. Hi, I'm Ashima Gupta. Thank you so much. Found the session really useful, and everything that you said resonated with me. I've got two questions actually. One is you must have raised like investments. So what in your view is the top tip for like, raising investments? And secondly, in terms of failures, what has been your biggest failure, or when you were expecting success and it didn't go that way, how did you sort of deal with it?
I think it was Bill Gates said you have to talk to 1,000 people before you get the first one. And it pretty much does feel like that. You just have to keep going and you will get knocked back and knocked back and knocked back. And you just have to believe in yourself and keep going. And suddenly you'll be sat in front of somebody having a beer at the top of a building one day, and you'll talk to them for 20 minutes and they'll go, I believe in you. I'm going to invest. And as soon as that person does that, then a load of others do as well. But it's just you just have to keep going to meet that person.
On that point, I'm always wearing the COO hat in businesses. So for me, it is going, how do I leverage the energy, the time, those resources for the best outcome? And it's around your people and your energy are the biggest things, and money. What can you actually leverage? Going wide, so thinking cap raise, going wide, and ask the questions, what are the things that align most with my business from a values perspective, from a, the ideal, like you would in marketing, ideal profile. What's the ideal profile? Go wide, really challenge yourself on that, and then go as narrow as you can on it. What does success look like once you've got your 5 criteria? What does success look like in that? And who's the best to align towards it? So I think it's the same principle raising capital as you would entering a global market. Go wide, ask the big questions, and then align with your goals, align with your values, align with your culture, align with what success looks like as a company. Go really tight and execute on that. And hopefully that builds the momentum. That's what I've seen happen.
Yeah, we just went through the fundraising process, so I can share some like fresh memories. So I think the first one is trying to leverage the network, because essentially if you get introduced to some like associate partner, then the process will really take long, and probably it won't be as satisfying as you would like to. So essentially, the closer you could get to a partner, the shorter will be the time you spend on raising the money. So trying to build the network is really crucial. The second part, I think, really depends on the stage of the investment, but I think the story is always important. So when I tell a personal story behind why I started the business, why I have a passion for what I'm doing, and what kind of vision I have for the company, like what will change in the world, really helps investors to understand kind of the kind of person that I am. And I think that's really important, especially at the early stage, because at the early stage, I think the investment happens mostly in founders and in the stories they're telling, rather than in specific numbers. Because post-Series A, it's a lot about numbers. It's about a lot about having a product market fit, having the right unit economics, and having the right revenue streams. But before that, it's really about people and the vision. And I think that's really important, that you can nail this and you can tell the right story to people. And if you actually are a failed entrepreneur, like you had your first business and you failed at it, again, like we talk to investors and they actually appreciate that because it shows that you have, first of all, you learn some stuff. And second, you have this persistence to do this crazy thing again. So that's always kind of appreciated.
Okay, do we have any other questions? Okay.
Hi, thank you for an interesting discussion. To follow on what you just touched on, the difference between Angels round and Series A round. we know that there could be a dramatic difference in scrutiny and due diligence that investors are doing on you. I believe both of you, maybe not Anna, have been through Series A so far. What is your biggest learning through that experience, and maybe some tips or advice you can share before?
Well, you'll have more experience than me on this, but I've sold 2 businesses where there was a massive due diligence process, and you just have to have everything really organized and have good people around you that are just, you know that they're going to be crawling all over everything. So as you go along, you may as well just make sure that everything's super organized and easy to find all the facts and evidence. But yeah, we're sort of going through this Series A process at the moment. So yeah, it's exciting. It's quite full on, but yeah, it's just very important to just have a good team that have got everything in order for you and to support you.
Difference though is it's a difference between a 40 kg weight on your shoulders versus a 20 kg weight on your shoulders. That's it really. And you know, the angel stuff is great. You learn an immense amount. I think their intentions seem to come through. I do angel investing myself. They want to give immense amounts of their time, and that's fun, and soak it up. Once you start going through into your Series A, Series B becomes more clinical, more DD focus, a lot, I wouldn't say less friendly, just a lot more, the cadence is strict, and but that's okay. You're a leader at that stage that's being groomed through, and you're just putting a different weight on your shoulders, you know, but that's okay too, because you're more than capable and you actually know most of the answers. So leverage your people around you to support you through that, and you'll be fine.
I suppose actually, one thing that we've done for the last 2 rounds is crowdfunding, which I didn't originally want to do because I thought it might devalue the business, but in fact it did exactly the opposite. And yeah, we've actually got loads of sales and contacts and network and PR from it. So yeah, no, it was a really good thing to do. Yeah. Yeah, it was really powerful.
Any other questions?
Just want to echo the thanks from everyone here tonight. It's really great to hear all your stories. So I'm at the very beginning of my founder journey, and I've got a co-founder. We're doing customer discovery on a few ideas. We had one idea that we were really excited about, and we were getting validation in these customer interviews. And then we started doing customer competitive analysis, and we didn't find anything initially. And something came up that pretty much solved the problem that we were trying to solve. And they've got some quite big clients with big names. So we got kind of spooked, and it kind of put a dampen on our journey. And it kind of only happened like a couple of weeks ago. And I wanted to know, how spooked should you get by competitors when you're ideating?
Yeah, I actually tried to start my business, I guess, 6 times. And before that, I always got spooked by competitors raising around, or a new competitor doing a similar thing, or I don't know, like some user sharing a very negative feedback. And I guess it's always easy to find a reason not to do something because it's scary and it's a new adventure, and essentially you are afraid that you're going to fail. That's kind of the biggest fear for everybody, I think. That's why it's really important in the first couple of months, just keep going. Even though you have competitors, and it's actually a good thing that you have competitors. It means that someone else noticed that there is a problem, and it all boils down to execution now. So essentially, like for me, it's still a bit scary. When I see a new competitor popping up in the same space, it's always like, oh my God, they are doing this already. We are going to fail and nothing is going to happen for us. But this initial fear is kind of, it's always easy to overcome it with analytical analysis, with analytical approach. So essentially trying to understand why you're better, what are your differentiators, what you're doing differently. And it always helps to bring it home, essentially, to make you first clarify your positioning, to make sure that you have articulated your differentiators really well. And also for you to kind of prove your point about the problem, because the more competitors you have, it means that the bigger the problem is. And if no one solved it yet, then you have a huge opportunity. So it's natural to be scared. It's natural to try to pull back because it's just a new journey. But at the same time, usually it's a good thing. So just bring this rational part into your thinking about this.
I think it depends on the market, the size of the market, and again, if you can differentiate yourself from what they're doing. But it does certainly happen in markets that you can get one player that surges forwards and takes over everything. So it's just figuring out what stage are they at. Is this likely to happen? But because it's easy to sit here and just say, just believe in yourself, just do it. But actually, just really, really think about, is the market big enough, size of the market? I mean, if it's a big opportunity, there's usually room for lots of players. But it depends how far along they are on the journey.
Good. No, not at all. It's not defeatist. I was going to say just nothing to say, but actually, Steph, I do have something to say. You don't know what your product and your business is going to look like in 12 months' time. And 1, 2 competitors, whatever, it doesn't matter. You learn from them, you learn and you grow, you pivot, you change, you do. You answer and solve the problem in a slightly different way, you nuance it. But you keep going, right? So just do it is the key.
Any other questions?
Good evening, ladies. My name is Mariana. Thank you all for all beautiful discussion and beautiful advices. I think I've learned so much. I've been an entrepreneur for quite a long time, but I've been in the beauty industry. Then I've been in a little bit of consulting, coaching, and teaching. And practically a couple of days ago, I opened my new limited company. But you all are talking about building team and a really good quality team around you. My question is, because from my past experience, I always been one person, one player. When you know that it's right time, so for example, at the moment I have 3 clients and I already see that I'm a bit struggling, but do you know or do you feel when it's the exact time to start and build team around you? And do you have any advice how to find those people?
I'll just jump in. Nice to meet you. I think knowing whether you want to build a company to 10,000 or 50 or 5 is a very important point. And you don't have to have the biggest ambitions in the world to exit, to IPO, to all this, So if you are happy and enjoy managing people and you want, what does success look like for you at 5, 10, is 50 feel too much? Your product, all these pieces, just understand what motivates you first. So bring it really central to you before you make that decision as to the business model. I think that's a really important starting point. And remember, as an entrepreneur, you can set up multiple different businesses at different stages in your life. It doesn't have to be the thing that's going to drag you along or that you have to put impetus into for 15, 20 years, So think about it that way.
Yeah, I'm not quite... I think with my companies, it was always getting to the stage where I can't do it all myself. I now need to... it was just going to sort of recruiters and trying to obviously define exactly the sort of person that I was going to need, and just interviewing people. Yeah, but if you're really starting to struggle on your own and you're recognizing that you're not going to be able to deliver the best for the business on your own, and you're going to need more people, then yeah, you just got to sort of take it. It's a nice position to be in if you've got clients and you're struggling to look after them. So I would have said that's really positive, and just sort of go for it, and you'll probably love the support.
Yeah, just to add to all this great advice, I think essentially the limits of your company are in your mind. So if you envision your company being just one person company, that's totally fine. And there are many like self-employed people with the creator economy. That's, I think, a very growing segment where people just work for themselves and they just assemble the team of like producers, musicians, or whoever they need just on the contractor basis when they need them. And they just work for themselves, because the main thing that they're looking for is freedom and autonomy in their decisions. That's kind of the most important thing for them. And in this case, your team is probably your kind of personal board of advisors, which you surround yourself with to get access to this diversity of opinions. Because in any case, if you want to innovate, the cognitive diversity is one of the most important parts. But essentially, if you feel like you want to build something bigger than just yourself and you want to expand the limits, then probably you need to start thinking again about the strategy in terms of the strategy of the product, which are the most critical parts, which I don't want to put my attention to, and I want to focus on something else. Because essentially it's all about prioritization and thinking what your time is worth of, like what should I focus on, I don't know, organizing events, creating calendar meetings, or creating a marketing campaign, or should I just focus on vision, or should I focus on strategy? And essentially, those are the trade-offs that are really helpful in understanding if you need to hire someone, because the time is definitely limited. And if you really want to build something great, then you need to go with someone. Like this proverb: if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
Do we have any other questions?
Yeah, just to reiterate, thanks so much for your discussion. It's been really interesting. My name is Hannah. I'm currently on an accelerator program, building our MVP, doing our first client pilot. And at the moment, I'm building my board of advisors. So a little bit similar to the previous question, what should we look for in advisors? Because everyone has an opinion, everyone wants a piece of the pie. And when you're young, in early stage of the business and a woman, it can get quite overwhelming. So what are the key things that you look for?
I can start. So I've recently assembled a board of advisors for us. So there were a couple of things that I was looking for. So the first one is this cognitive diversity that I mentioned. So making sure that I'm not limiting the kind of the boundaries of my company just by my mindset, because obviously everyone is different and there are different types of mindsets that can be applied to the same situation. So if I want to innovate, I want to ensure that I can get access to different ways of solving the same problem, because it might be that it's not my way of solving the problem and making a decision would be the most efficient in a particular situation. So I'm trying to understand what kind of person could kind of create this kind of complete the puzzle with me to make sure that we have this diverse thinking in the company. The second part is competence, obviously making sure that they can contribute to the company in a meaningful way. So not just some random person who knows just this one thing, but in general who has this holistic view and can support the company and on the long run. Essentially, you can think about them as your like family doctor who would stay with you for 20 years and who would be able to help you diagnose the things before they go out of hand. And the third thing is this emotional connection, just making sure that you have trust and this chemistry with the person, because you will need to talk to them about some like almost intimate things that you might not share with other people. And you want to feel confident about that.
Yeah, I would agree with that. You've got to to trust these people. They're advising you. So that's number one. You've got to be able to trust what they say. I'm always conscious that people need to be better than me at things. Otherwise, how can they advise me? So I'm always trying to surround myself with people that are way more impressive and way more experienced and better than myself. Yeah, I think the trust and respect thing. And like you say, there will be an emotional connection. So can I talk openly to this person?
I'm going to push back on some of that from a, yeah, they got to challenge you. I think advisory is, there's a responsibility there, right? So all the bits that you've said and the trust bit, but in terms of that shares piece, you know, you can mentor and not expect shares, and advising, they may expect, let's say, shares, some options or something in there. What are they in it for? First and foremost, they align with you. And also, if they're happy to align and for a period of time, test them, 3 months. And if they're in there and you're feeling the value from them, then take it further to 9 months to 12 months and look at that pro rata share option piece over that period of time. So get quite clinical about it. That'd be the first piece, because you can get a million pieces of advice, Hannah, and how do you distill that, right? So with your advisory board, absolutely. But also be clear on the expectations and have them advise for 6 months, 12 months. You need to freshen it. They need to keep bringing, especially in that startup stage. So align with your values and culture. Bring something that is still, it's your business, it's your model. They need to bring those skills into it, but something that you do not have and that can really stretch you, but timestamp it around that, sign it off, be very clear in writing in bullet points would be my advice. Only bring 3 to the table. Don't bring any more than that. Ideally 2. Outside of you.
Hi, I have a question for you. We're seeing Sequoia Capital and Y Combinator on Twitter at the moment talking about how startups should behave during a recession. Can you give any advice to startups in the room or entrepreneurs on how they should deal with a recession in this country?
Well, I'm in the energy sector, so it's a little bit different. I think it is helpful if you. I'm in an area that's sort of a little bit recession-proof at the moment because I'm sort of helping people with that problem. So I probably can't comment.
I think there are a couple of just common sense things, just making sure that you optimize your runway, making sure that the burn rate is quite low, because we might be in the state for a couple of years and the money, capitals that you have available would be the most important thing, especially if you're at the stage when you're not earning money. It's quite important that you can try to make the life of your company as long as possible, because if you run out of money, it's not a certainty that you will be able to raise again. And it's really important that you try to extend it as much as possible. The second part is, I think, that making sure that you kind of have this transparency with the team, because for some startups, especially at early stages, layoffs are kind of a necessity. So that might be happening. So you should be keeping them up to date in terms of your decision making and in terms of what's happening in the company. Because if it's happening out of a sudden and people are just being let go without any notice and without understanding of what's happening, that's just a really bad state. So essentially, the more transparency and visibility you could introduce, and the more openly you can talk to your team, making sure that they understand what's happening, it's just better for your business, because people obviously will be scared and they know what's going on. They have fears, and if they don't hear from leadership, they will just assume. And it might not be kind of the best assumption for your company. They might just start looking for something themselves. So I would say that like essentially optimizing the capital, making sure that you spend effectively, and also making sure that you establish this connection with people so that they don't lose their heads in fear.
So I guess one last question. Okay.
Hello, thank you for all insights we got today. My name is Irina and I have a question about problems. So we do know how important it is to solve problems, especially when it comes to small business, to startups, but sometimes as being said, we have a lot of problems at Pitfalls we have never expected, but the world is changing and sometimes we don't like that change at all. So of course, we should plan, and take care about our finance, but what should we do also? How we could handle these problems we have never expected before? For example, it's COVID, something crazy. So how to stay alive, I would say, how to help your business, yourself and your team to be on the market and keep going.
Broad question, but in times of change, they are inevitable. And you cannot, these market economics, who can predict this stuff, right? So I think to your point, what do you do in those moments? You consistently and continuously build resilience in yourself and your team. And a lot of that I've found is around the vulnerability piece, taking people with you, sharing of stories and the narrative of what's going on, learning from each other, the narrative of globally, and how does that affect me personally, and how does it affect the business? What are the risks? Share, learn, grow, put things in place. The communication piece, people in communication and context. Always put context before content. Always put process before content. So give people context. So demystify and de-fear. And that was a hair clip popping out. And these people will come with you. Most of them will, Leadership is about vulnerability and keeping it real. So those are the things that you can control. The other things you can't control.
Yeah, I think I totally agree. And I think it would also add to that, don't necessarily see problems and challenges as a negative thing. I always see it as an opportunity. So if something comes along, when your back's against the wall like that, you suddenly come up with the best ideas and the best solutions that differentiate your business from everybody else. So don't be afraid of challenges. Yeah, see them as an opportunity.
Yeah, I think like there is this great book called Black Swan on this matter. But I think in general, it's not that those events that kill businesses, it's inflexibility and the inability to change that kills businesses. Because I think change happens all the time. It just might not be as visible as COVID, for example, or as anything else happening in the world. And as the most important thing is making sure that you can quickly adapt, and that's just in general a really good thing to have. Because, like, for example, YouTube launched as a video dating app, and they pivoted multiple times before they got to the place where they were. And it's not necessarily COVID or something else that made them change. It's the insights that made them change. And it's just good to stay on top of that, making sure that you think about the defensibility of the business. You're thinking about the strategy for the business, thinking about long-term paths for your business. And that helps because essentially you can create some things that would protect the business in case if something falls apart.
Thank you very much for your time today and those wonderful answers, very insightful and lots to think about. Peter, would you like to round up?
Yeah, I would just like, if you like me, join me in thanking this wonderful group of beautiful, successful women. Just before we break out to networking, drinkings, I would like to tell you more about our next event, which is going to be about Web3 and fundraising, new models about how we can fundraise using tokens and Web3 rather than old school equity. And we're doing this with Louis Silkin. So please stay tuned for more details on that. And remember, there is a surgery, clinic surgery, legal surgery just outside if you want to talk to this wonderful team of lawyers. This is our team, myself and Marian. We have great ambassadors, Lorelai, Leiba, and Afrat. They're around here, you can meet them, and these are their superpowers, we call them. So you can ask them any questions around that. We have James as well, Antonio, Ash, and Kane, and they could all help you and guide you with anything you have. So yeah, please join us for networking now. Okay.